Let me tell you a little bit about myself and my wife. I'm Tim Walsh, last I checked. I probably know many of you, if not almost all of you. June and I have been involved in the board level of the ARS since 1997. We are officially co-curators of the Moss Family Temperate Woodland Garden at Humboldt Botanical Garden, and I think that's the best job I've ever had. I started out life in high school and part of college working as a ranch hand during the summers. I was a real estate broker, stockbroker, and CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and I still get asked about stocks. I often tell the story that Will Rogers said when somebody would say to him, so how do you make money in the stock market? Will Rogers said, oh, that's easy. You buy stocks, and when they go up, you sell them. And they said, aha, here's the gotcha. What if they don't go up? He says, even easier. Don't buy them. So that's my standard pat answer to anybody asking about stocks. A couple of you obviously got that. Okay, so one thing I learned through my careers, something that served me well over time, is patience. I think that's really, really important. That's what it takes to be a good investor and a good gardener. In the early 1990s, the Eureka Chapter member, Larry Moss, and I had been discussing a botanical garden, and we have such an unusual place here. What a kind of a neat thing we could do. And just ironically, just a couple weeks later, there was a lady, she's not much of a gardener, but she had visited a couple of botanical gardens, and she really enjoyed herself. So she called all the local hort societies around the area here, and that was the match that lit it. So we got together, formed a group. There were about 5 of us to start. We established a 501c3 corporation, and with about 3,212 committee meetings later, we had a garden underway, which was really kind of fun. So, am I muted still?
No, you're fine.
Okay. I can start over. We put out a contest basically. Hi, Terry. Can you fix that?
Yeah, I can fix it.
Okay, I just want to see everybody.
Oh, you want to see everybody?
I want to see everybody if I can.
Excuse me. Pardon me.
Peanut gallery over here.
There you go.
So we had a contest of a number of landscape architects, and a guy named Ron Lutzko, somebody I've never heard of, he won the contest, and it only cost us $50,000 for a 44.5 acre botanical garden, full sets of plans, everything that was needed. $50,000 sounds like a lot of money until you know that Ron Lutzko in 2010 became Landscape Architect of the Year for North America, and he's the lead article in the current Gardens Illustrated magazine. If you take that, it's a British magazine, gorgeous magazine. I suggest it if you really like gardens. That's one of the best ones out there. So Ron is famous now. So we got him when it only cost $50,000. It would be at a zero to that these days for something like that. It was a big deal. So I was able to retire in 2005, and Larry Moss, my cohort, the two of us that kind of lit the fuse going, Larry had passed away, and he left his retirement account to Humboldt Botanical Gardens, and that got us on the stick to get things going. D's in here somewhere. D sold 20 benches for $5,000 a piece, and we had no garden. We didn't have a place leased yet. So it's just amazing. She's a hell of a salesperson. Dee, take it back up again. That's good. You got to go into real estate, my dear. So tonight we'll be talking about Humboldt Botanical Garden. Going to invite some of y'all to come down if you haven't visited us. Some of you have already been there, I'm pretty sure. We were on tour. It was on tour, I should say, in the 2017 conference, ARS conference convention that was held here in Eureka. And not everybody saw it, but if you've seen it already, it's changed a lot just even in the last 4 years. So with that, I'll see if I can't make this thing happen. Share screen.
And then if everybody
speaker
view, they'll have a better
share it, and if we're lucky, see what happens. There we go. Can anybody see that? Do you know how to read? Okay, this is one of the best singles ads I've ever seen printed. It's reported to have been listed in the Atlanta Journal. It says, single black female seeks male companionship, and ethnicity is unimportant. I'm a very good girl who loves to play. I love long walks in the woods, riding in your pickup truck, hunting, camping, and fishing trips. Cozy winter nights lying by the fire. Sounds like she's from Bakersfield almost. That's my wife. Candlelight dinners will have me eating out of your hand. I'll be at the front door when you get home from work, wearing only what nature gave me. Call da-da-da-da-da-da and ask for Annie. I'll be waiting. And there she is. I can't hear you laughing. I hope you all are. All right. So this is how I got started and addicted to plants. It's with Lodorei King George. That's one of the better ones I've seen around. Somebody's been whacking on it, keeping it in shape for quite a few years. But of all things, when I was growing up, rhododendrons were all around Eureka, and they were great for cutting and selling further up the street. Because my dad was a dentist and we get candy money that way. And my aunt never did like it when I cut most of her rhododendrons off. But that was my introduction to rhododendrons. And then one day we were up in, of all places, Eugene, Oregon. And we were over at Hendricks Park. The kids were out playing around, and I was standing right next to this big old rhododendron that I had no interest in until something hit my nose. And it just sent me over the hill. That was literally an epiphany, at least for me. And that was Lodorei King George, just a magnificent plant and a fabulous scent. I had no idea there were scented rhododendrons. And so that started a career downhill ever since. And we have some beauties growing right here in Rhododendron Central, Eureka, California. And this is one of our auriculatum that we put in about 6 years ago. They're kind of slow to bloom. Took us about maybe 10-ish years, but this last year they bloomed beautifully. They bloom very late. They bloom in late July and into August, sometimes as late as September. Wonderful scent, beautiful frilly flowers, gorgeous plants, except they don't have leaves all the way to the ground, put it that way, but they make a really nice hedge for us. For me, getting started was with hybrids. This is President Roosevelt, which of course led to species. I became a bit of a species snob for a while. This is Augustinii. I believe this one's up in at the Species Foundation. And then I have a fascination with leaves. I hope you do too. That's what you're looking at the rest of the time, 90% of the year when they're not in bloom. This is Sir Charles Lemon. I first ran across Sir Charles Lemon in a big fancy house in England, and I had no idea what it was, except all of a sudden walking along the trail, there's all these white flowers all over the ground. And literally it was almost 40 feet high. I had no idea they could get that big, but just fabulous cinnamon indimentum on them, just beautiful plants, and they just thrive here. Oops, let me back up here. Sorry about that. Oops, come on, we can do this. I'm going through the whole thing here. Okay, previous. Where are my previous? Don't you just love it when this kind of stuff goes on? Okay. There's, my favorite plant, which is actually the one before this, for foliage, has to be Falconeri subspecies Eximium. It holds that color on both the tops of the leaves, on all the leaf pedicels, down the stem for at least a year, and it finally washes off, usually on top, usually in about November around here. But that plant is just this gorgeous thing. The flowers are so-so, but who cares? I mean, this is what you're looking at about 85% of the time during the year. And looking forward to getting this up to a full-sized eximium here in the next few years. We'll see. A pachyxanthum. It's blooming, just started to bloom 3 days ago in the Humboldt Botanical Garden. It holds that color on the leaves for about 3 months on the top. Looks really, really nice. Very, very showy plant. And of course, my probably all-time favorite, other than Eximium, has to be Campanulatum subspecies originosum. When that thing comes out, the first time we saw that, I think we were in Canada, and they had a little hedge of them there, and they're just amazing. When they first come out like that, you can't see it here, but the underside of those new leaves that are this powder blue, it's snow white indimentum, and then they do a really bad thing. They flower, and it's really kind of boring. Campanulatum is kind of a purpley ugly thing, but who cares with foliage like that? Around here, we do a lot of the Madeni species and hybrids, and this is Nuttallii, Cyno-Nuttallii, and literally this is nothing special. They all do this for about a month and a half to 2 months, depending on the weather, every year. That's all the new growth on these things. They also have fabulous scented flowers, but just that foliage alone makes the plant worth owning. I don't know if they'd survive, Eugene, but come on down and visit. We'll show them to you here in about another month and a half. Okay, come on. All right. Even oddballs. This is a plant I got from Don Wallace. That's a Madeni. It's kind of an unnamed thing. And I don't know if it had to do with the potted soil that was in the pot or what it was, but literally the last 2 years, it's been split leaf like this. It's really odd. Then it all greens out a little later, but this is really, I think, very unusual. I've never seen anything like this before. Maybe we can get Terry Henderson to offer it if it becomes stable. Unfortunately, again, it's a pretty tender plant. Probably won't happen. Terry's going, yeah, sure. Of course, the other rhododendrons, azaleas. This is Cannon's double. We have a couple of these at Humboldt Botanical Garden. It really wows people. It's a showstopper. We hope to get from Terry this year some Washington State Centennial, which is my very favorite deciduous azalea. I just think that thing is hard to beat anywhere. Great big flowers. And including our natives, we have maybe a few of you have heard of Stagecoach Hill. It's about 45 minutes north of Eureka, overlooking the ocean. And it's an area that was burned by the Native Americans. Usually it's thought to keep the forest back, so cause new growth to happen and bring in deer and elk, which they would then shoot. That's the story behind it. But the great thing about Occidentali, and you have them in your area up there, is every plant is different than the one next to it. And there are some just amazing differences, just fabulous. And of course, they smell fabulous as well. I had no idea there were native plants until I really started, rhododendrons, until we got into the ARS. Here's one form of it. This one's named Humboldt Picotee, according to some people who gave it to us some time ago, Peter Schick. And it all came off of one plant. Apparently that's a chimera. And there are some really dark flowers on it. There's some near white flowers on it. And then there's this kind of this medium one, which has been named Humboldt Picotee, all on the same plant. Really bizarre. And then the last of the group are that we can grow here reasonably well are the tropicals, the Vireas. This one is growing on my back porch 3 years ago now. I took Best to Show with this thing. Unfortunately, I lost the tag, maybe D. I'll have to ask Shirla Bertelman what it is, because it's just a great doer. And the good thing about Vireas, from what I can see, they're like, you treat them like orchids, number one. And number two, they will bloom for sometimes 2 or 3 months. Just amazing. Typically really ugly plants. They're mostly epiphytes, live up in the trees and on rocks and that kind of stuff, so they don't really care much about leaves. But boy, some of the flowers are just amazing. Okay. About my introduction to the world, enough about that. Let's take a look at I used to call it our baby botanical garden. It may still be one of the youngest in the United States. It's still a very young garden from the time we started making stuff happen there, which was around 2005, 2006 when we first broke ground. And we hope you'll come down and take a look and see how we're doing. Okay, so if I can do this without changing things here too badly, here we go. Here's Eureka. Here's the Pacific. Here's Humboldt Bay. I live on the hill that's right along in here, right about where the dot on the I is, and right around the corner from us is College of the Redwoods and Humboldt Botanical Garden. We were able to acquire a lease of their 44 and a half acres because it's probably the most faulted area in the state of California, and can cause real problems. So they had to do earthquake fault checking, I think after the Loma Prieta strike, and that was before. That was after they built the the College of the Redwoods. So now they're tearing down a bunch of buildings and moving them other places, but they never did build on the hillside behind them. So we have a 44 and a half acre lease, renewable, and we're looking forward to developing the whole thing. It's about maybe 12-15% developed so far. Very unusual place in that we get southern exposure. Most of the mountains, of course, are shoved up out of the Pacific, so our mountains are typically running north and south, facing east and west, but we have a nice little ridge that we're built in there. Makes it really special for us. We grow Meconopsis here because number one, it's a big show. People come from miles just to see it because we have cool summers. It makes it really, really special. We had some really nice ones over the years, but like I was saying earlier, we had a crop failure last year. We got nothing last year. So I've replanted almost maybe 30 of them so far this year, maybe a little bit of a show this year, but next year we hope they'll be wonderful. This is Bailey-eye. The one used to be called Botanicifolia, but everybody's changing things all the time. That's why you get a degree in botany or taxonomy. Anyway, this is our greenhouse. This was donated by the world's largest lily cut flower operation that exists over in Arcata. They have many acres, 40, 50 acres of greenhouses just like that, and they gave that to us. So we are, of course, pleased as punch. It's really, we use it for everything. We don't really have a building up yet. So we have all kinds of meetings in here, and it works out really, really well for us. Sun Valley Bulb Farm just put out notice last week that they're going to start growing marijuana. 28 acres of marijuana under glass. So stay tuned if that's what you like. This is our Dedicam ornamental terrace. In late 2008, it had only been planted in 2006. So it's starting to look like something, and in bands of color. The glass houses, we hopefully will have an extensive collection of Vireas ultimately, although they do reasonably well here. All it takes is 1 year. Peter Schick lost 400 of all of his in 1 year. So we're going to have them so that we can move them in and out if necessary. That's going to go into our glass house. I showed this the other day in a program and asking people, not this particular picture, but I have it on the back porch, and it's just starting to put a couple little blooms on it, but that's not a pine tree. I asked people if they could tell me what kind of a pine tree it was, and everybody looked perplexed. And of course, I brought the plant down into the view, and sure enough, it's a rhododendron. This is stenophyllum, gorgeous thing, amazing. People do not believe it's a rhododendron. And meanwhile, outdoors in the ornamental terrace, we have these rainbows of colors, orange, red, white, pink, blue, you name it. We got in these big bands like a big rainbow. And we have a native plant garden that's one of probably the best in the West and maybe in North America, at least for Arctostophilus. We grow more Arctostophilus than any place else that we can tell anyway, and some unusual varieties. And this kind of fun thing about them is they start some of them blooming in late winter. And I'm not an Arctostophilus nut, but the guy that runs that garden for us, he's an absolute nutcase when it comes to Arctostophilus. He knows his stuff. He's a retired fish and game guy and works his tail off there every year. And we even have an earth sculpture. Okay, now pay attention. It's called All Happy Now. It's based on Fermat's spiral, which the formula is right up there. Read that. Ask me later and I'll pay attention because there will be a test on this, okay? It's a great place for volunteers. This is a group of Humboldt State University students in their senior year. To graduate, they had to volunteer someplace, and a lot of them chose Humboldt Botanical Gardens. We got a whole lot of planting done over a long weekend. It was really, really fun having these kids there. Some more making new friends, a great place to make new friends. These are not Humboldt State students. These are jailbirds. This is called, they're members of the SWAP team with the Sheriff's Work Alternative Program. These guys get out of jail and they do really hard work for us. We really use the heck out of them. They do a lot of great work and they're sober, as long as they're in jail. It's great to have them. We've had a lot of community events over the years, about the last 8 years or so. Parties, weddings are starting to take place. The only problem with weddings around here is we don't really have a venue outdoors for them. So they're risking, if it's early spring or winter, certainly they're risking a lot of rain. So we tend not to have a lot of weddings in that time of the year. But it's also a place for a learning, of course, and you can find out all kinds of interesting stuff. And even in winter, it can be kind of pretty. It's really interesting. At the bottom of the picture here, this is our heather garden. Golly, this has got to be 9 years ago. It was just getting started. It's really filling in nicely now. It's really starting to look good. We have a big heather enthusiast that's taking great care of it. And of course, in the summer, it fills right back up. It looks really good. You can start to see them here growing. Let's see if I can get back to that last. Well, I don't need to. Okay. There's something for everyone here. Cute little pink cordylines. See those cute little guys? We put in, 15 or 20 of them in the pink part of the garden. And they're supposed to grow to about 3 feet in 10 years. These grew 8 feet in 3 years. So we had to take them all out. But this is what they look like when they start finishing up. When they grow. I mean, good Lord, some of the leaves are as wide as the whole plant was when they went in about 3 or 4 years later. Pretty amazing. Beautiful plants. And here's my favorite part of the garden, mainly because I'm a rhododendron plant nut in general. And June and I are curators here. And so we get to determine what goes in. Boy, what a fun thing that is, have a blank slate. We're just over an acre in size, according to Google Maps when I look at it. We have a few plantings in. This was taken from a guy on a little ultralight looking down on the garden, but that's pretty much the whole garden. This was in 2008. So we already started some of the little tiny plantings there. Not much going on yet. This is a couple of years before, year and a half before, when it had been sculptured by big machines and buttoned up for the winter. We left a few of the plants that were there because they were looking happy. We had to have something there, but it kept everything from sliding away, which was really, really nice. Here's the start of some of the planting in 2007, 2008. Some of these are encore azaleas for the most part. We thought we'd give them a try. I don't think they like it real well here. They do bloom twice for us, but we don't get harsh enough weather for whatever makes up their constitution. So we have a few of them that have grown into nice things, but we probably lost about 60% of them. They just didn't like they need more stress is what I'm trying to say. Here we are awaiting manure and mulch. We brought in probably 50, 14 foot by 8 foot wide dump trailers of old rotted horse manure from a horse farm just south of us. And boy, did that make a difference. The things just love it there. We have relatively sandy soil. Parts of it, though, are clay. Clay is good because it has a lot of nutrient, but you dump a lot of manure on sandy soil, let it sit there for a year and plant into it. Oh, plants are in heaven. They just love it there. So here we are in November 2008. We're still moving stuff into the garden. And 2 years later, a year and a half later, I should say, May of 2010, it's starting to look like a real garden. It's really kind of fun seeing it happen. Again, about 2 years from their first planting, starting to fill in nicely. And here's an update. This is Magnolia rostrata here in the front. Huge leaves. I'd never come across this before. The flowers are so-so, but the plant's going to get huge, and it is fully deciduous, so people like to take home those giant big leaves. The Madden Eyes, they are weeds here. They love it. This is that we hope to acquire all depending on the taxonomist, all 28 species in the subsection. This is Dalhousii rhabdotum. It looks like a hybrid. It doesn't even look like a rhododendron hardly, but what a plant. It smells as good as it looks too, which is really nice. Again, Madeni. This is one of the forms of Madeni subspecies, Madeni. And again, just fabulous scent. And you can't kill them here. We went through the 91, 92, 17 degrees on our property here in Eureka, and lost one small Madeni that had just been put in the year before. Everything else was just fine. Of course, we live on a hill. That kind of helps. But fabulous scent. And they bloom starting in February. Some of the early ones are in late December, but they bloom right into end of May, sometimes into June. Different subspecies. So it's really interesting. This is Formosum, variety Formosum. And Burmanicum, we lost this last year. We're gardeners like anybody else. We don't keep. Unfortunately, they don't all work. We lost this last year, a year before, after several years in the garden. No idea what got it, but it went away. So we're going to get another one, I'm sure. Growthhousii. This is actually, as far as I can tell, it's Lindleyi, and I looked it up. And Cox suggests it's a form of Lindleyi. Cross this with Nuttallii, and you get a number of these big leaf, fabulous scented, large flowered things that do so well here. We have quite a number of other things, of course, other than rhododendrons growing in the temperate woodland garden. This is yellowbird. In my opinion, if you're going to get a yellow magnolia, this is the one to own. The flowers are not real big, but they're not butter yellow. They're right on the edge of daffodil yellow. This photo doesn't do it real good justice, but it is really a great deep yellow, really, really yellow. Magnolia iolanthe, Ron Lesko, again, famous guy now, but when he drew the plans, he wanted 15 of these in about a 40 by 60 foot area. They'll cover one would cover 40 by 60 feet, we found out. So we did not plant those. We put in a couple of other magnolias that are living up to the promise of being 15 by 30 feet in size. So huge, but they smell good. They smell great, and they're early. That's both the good news and the bad news. We get to get them in February, and we had huge winds here 2 days ago, and it blew almost every flower off of them, which is kind of too bad. So this is Magnolia wilsoni. Some of you might know this. It's downward-facing flowers. There's only a couple of them in the genus that do that. Wonderfully scented. They want to be a shrub, not a tree, so we plant them fairly close to the walkway so people can look right into them and sniff them. They're just great. And for the alley, in other words, the road that goes through the garden, it's lined on both sides with Magnolia denudata. If you've ever been to Boston in the springtime, you see those trees, those big white flowered trees with maybe 2,000 or 3,000 blossoms on them. That is Magnolia denudata, the Yulon magnolia. They're just starting to reach their full strength right now. We didn't lose as many flowers on these in that wind 2 days ago because they're not quite fully open yet, but they smell great in a warm day, which happens on occasion around here. Our Camellia reticulatas, this is, I think, a year or two after we put them in. They are now 7 years older, and good Lord, they're trees. They get huge. They love it here, big flowers, and they tend to be resistant to the blossom blight that gets a lot of japonicas and Williamsii and the like. So reticulatas, they're kind of hard to find. Not many people producing them, but they do really, really well here. At one time, Eureka was known as the Holland of North America. There was an industrialist in New York State that had really bad health problems, and he used to collect the money in New York and run up to spend the winters run down to spend the winters in Georgia and summers up in Michigan. And was a very wealthy guy and had a hobby farm on Long Island where he was growing azaleas and the like, and mostly dianthus, though, carnations. And his brother lived out here in Eureka, California, and died, left an estate. This guy had to come out here. His name is Charles Willis Ward, and Charles never felt better in his life. The weather was perfect, so he dismantled all of his big greenhouses, moved them to Eureka, California, and started growing azaleas, tulips, daffodils, and camellias. So the very first of the reticulata camellias, Captain Roz, was delivered from, originally came from China, went to England, and was delivered then to Eureka, California. And we have all over town, these reticulata camellias just do really, really well here. We also have a number of other plants. This is Halessia, or Halesia, or Halesia. Depends how your mother said it. This is the pink form, the Carolina silver bell. They do really, really well here to the point where they're a bit of a thug. We have all kinds of seeds dropping all over the place. We have to row guide every year. They all want to bloom. Very similar to Styrax japonica. This one's pink chimes. Also does really, really well here. The nice thing about Styrax is they have beautiful bark during the winter months, which is really nice. I wish I could say this is our copy of Davidia and Balacrata, the handkerchief tree. This is taken from another place. We ordered the cultivar, the selection called Sonoma, and it's supposed to bloom within 3 years of potting up. We put those in 2007. We had our first blooms last year. So, and they weren't not much to show, but we're hoping this coming years ahead that it'll fill out and look like what they're supposed to. If you don't grow one of these things, you really should. Harold can tell you about this. They are just spectacular, and they can take the heat and the cold. The best ones I've ever seen are probably back in Pennsylvania. Just beautiful. We also grow dogwoods. The last one, I just flipped through that slide. That one's called Wolf Eyes, has variegated leaves. This is Satomi. Not all of them are white, of course. Satomi is a pretty good one. It actually get a little darker than this as the season goes on. And a great cross, Cornus, is a cross between Cornus nuttallii and Cornus florida, the ones from the East Coast, and they just smother themselves in blooms. They just do really, really, really well. They would do even better for you, I'm sure, because you get colder winters and hotter summers, and that really helps. We're looking for year-round color if we can get it to 1 degree or another. So we plant Eucryphias. These come from the southern hemisphere. Most of them are in Chile. A lot of them grow in New Zealand, Tasmania, southern hemisphere plants. They light smell, but you can really sniff it when you get up close, and it's an absolute covered with bees every fall. Just beautiful plants. Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, our native Trillium chloropetalum. If you can find the one called Volcano, I found this up in Washington State maybe 12 years ago. They're blooming now. They're just starting to show up. They're native to the Redwood National Park up north of us here, and they just love it, at least in our areas. They do really well, expand beautifully. This is Dan Hinckley's Corydalis called Blue Heron. Nice plant. If you don't have it, you should get it. They bloom for literally 11 months, sometimes only 10, sometimes a whole year. Corydalis do really well for us here. That one has nice red stems. This is Alata. It's a gardenia-like scent. If you like scent, again, this one blooms for about 8 months of the year in our climate anyway. We will be putting both of those in. And the one that does really exceptionally well for us is one called Blue Panda. You can find that, I think, in Washington, some of the Washington nurseries. It blooms literally, again, all year long. And they're not all blue, although I'm a big fan of blue. Some of them are red, like George Baker, which is probably the darkest red of any of the Corydalis out there. And we have a fern canyon that we've created over the last several years. This is Atherium niponicum pictum. This is a naturally occurring fern in Japan, in the forests of Japan. And there are variants on that. This one is called Ursula's Red. This is in the trade. They are deciduous. That's the only bad news. They disappear for the winter, but they come back strong every year. They really like it. We do tree ferns here like nobody's business. They're slow to grow, of course. But they do really, really well. We had a longtime ARS member, Dr. Broflot, who bought 3 of these many years ago and put them over in his gulch behind his house. And when we asked if we could have some because they'd grown to like 30 or 40 of them. And so we got about 5 of them from him, and they probably doubled in size in the last 5 years. They're just looking really happy. So tree ferns are growing up in there, and it makes a very nice place for them kind of where they're sheltered in there. And of course, Meconopsis poppies. I got this particular poppy from an outfit out of Palmer, Alaska, and it's supposed to be the standard old Bailey, or used to be called Botanicifolia. They're supposed to be plain old blue, not plain old. I mean, there's pretty spectacular, but this had a lot of white in it. And I've gotten some seeds from Scotland that promises to be pale blue. I hope it's somewhere near this. I collected the seeds on this, and they were not fertile, any of them. Didn't get any more of these, but I just loved that. It stood around for about 3 years and finally went away, which was too bad. But this is a species, the Meconopsis, the blue Meconopsis called grandis. It's very perennial. Bailey is not always perennial. It's usually a lot more purple in it than the true turquoise blue, but it's a really happy, healthy plant. And this, of course, is Bailey, which was Botanicifolia. This is the fabled Himalayan blue poppy that does really, really well in Scotland. The problem if you're going to plant this, I was talking to Harold earlier about this. He's tried it up in Eugene. The big killer on these things is heat. They get over about 75 degrees for a few days, and you lose them. And maybe that's what happened to our crop last year. I don't know, but we didn't get really much of anything to show up last year. But they crossed grandis with Bailey here, trying to get something special, and they came up with one in 1954 called Lingholm, and it had fertile seeds. That was the first time that they'd ever noticed fertile seeds. So you'll see this at the Rhododendron Species Botanical Garden. It's just a spectacular plant. Comes back year after year if it's happy, and gets big clumps, and you can dig them up and break off pieces. It's really a great plant. So search out for Lingholm if you're going to grow any of them. It's probably one of the best ones. There are 3 forms of until just very recently were called Meconopsis that grow in Wales and England. There's a couple, 3 different forms of it here, but it's been moved into Papaver cambricum is what they're calling it now. No longer is it, because it's so far away from where Meconopsis grow that they've decided it doesn't really count. So our signature plant at the Botanical Garden is our Iris douglassiana. It's an endemic there, and here's just a little picture of it. This was there before we did any work. We dug them all out, weeded it, and then put them all back, and they come in several different colors, mostly shades of lavender. Again, it's an endemic there, and it's part of our temperate woodland garden, which we hope is a world-class garden in the making. So this is just the beginning. These 2 little plants I say right now, this is Nacelle, just a gorgeous rhododendron. They're probably about 3.5 feet tall here. These were the cutting plants of Bob Bodie, who lived in Fort Bragg. These were his mother plants, and before he moved, he gave us these 2, and they are now about 8 feet, maybe 9 feet tall. We've added a 3rd one, so this view is no longer the same. We've added a lot since then, but they just love it here and flower their heads off. Great plants. Nacelle for a hybrid is one of the best ones you can get, as far as I can tell. So even though we're just a toddler of garden, and you've only just had a taste, we're looking better all the time. You want to see the Meconopsis, make sure you come down in late May into June. That's when they're usually hitting their peak. It's about the same time you can stop off in June, early June, late May, to see the full show at Stagecoach Hill if you want to see Occidentale and put on a heck of a show. It's just an amazing place. So we look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully everybody on the screen here, for a personal tour. We love to take people up and show our gardens. They're really kind of special. So I hope I hadn't embarrassed you by showing you a lot of what you already knew and that you haven't fallen asleep yet, but we do appreciate you for sticking around the whole show. I hope to see you at Humboldt Botanical Gardens. So I'll leave this up for a bit. Visit us at hbgf.org. That's our website. And you can see an awful lot more up-to-date stuff and a lot more information. I've only got about literally, I counted up to 11,000 plus pictures in Adobe Acrobat that I'm saving it in, or PowerPoint or wherever. So I had to whittle it down from my normal 43-hour and 20-minute speech to about 45 minutes, and I hope we haven't lost you all yet. But do come and visit us. Again, if I were to just say when to come, probably if you're really into the rhododendrons, early May, late April, early May. If you want to see a little more than that, the later rhododendrons come in late May into June. Hopefully the Meconopsis will be blooming, and you'll be able to see some really neat late bloomers like the auriculatum and one called serotinum, which is a beautiful, frilly, super smelly, late blooming rhododendron, and all the primulas will be going in May and June. So by all means, stop and see us. Okay, questions?